this song was written by Mac Davis, and it was recorded by Elvis after he did the 68 comeback special when it was this big smash hit. So he went into the studio and he recorded all these songs, and that's when he yielded like in the Ghetto, Suspicious Minds, Kentucky Rain. And in the Ghetto, they referred to that as Elvis always used the term message song. So this was like a new thing for him with all the 60s music up to that point that was sort of raising social consciousness and getting into social issues like the Vietnam War. Mac Davis wrote In the Ghetto, which is about the cycle of poverty in the inner city. You could tell there was some tension in him because he didn't want to make every song a quote message song, social commentary. He viewed himself primarily as an entertainer, and if you can look, you can look at interviews and stuff, and it's mentioned a few times. But before we get into In the Ghetto, I wanted to play one of the. This is a press conference. It was almost 3 years later. So it's November of 1972. He's in Hawaii, and he's getting ready for the Aloha via satellite concert in early January. So they're holding a press conference 2 months before it, and he's pretty strung out on drugs here. That's pretty evident because he's having trouble speaking. But you'll hear him you'll hear him say, sort of speak with sort of disdain about message songs, and he just wants to entertain people. So let me play that.
It's a great privilege to do this satellite program, and I'm going to do my best, and all the people that work with me, to do a good show. It's just pure, entertainment. No messages and no this and that. Just try to make people happy for that 1 hour that he comes across. If we do that, well, then I think I've done a job.
And he said something similar before the Astrodome concert in the press conference he gave before that in 1970. So, but In the Ghetto was this big thing because it was the other song he did was Don't Cry Daddy, which was about divorce, right? So the divorce rate was escalating, right? So there's that. Now In the Ghetto, a lot of people they're doing their reaction videos to the live version of the song. So the studio version I actually like much better. It's sort of a slower paced ballad, and the backup, the female backup vocalists, there's a gospel aspect to their backup, but it's not as overtly gospel. So the song comes off as more of a ballad, and it also includes cello. And it was in listening to In the Ghetto, hearing that cello juxtaposed next to his voice, that's when I realized, like, oh, his voice sounds like a cello. It has that's what it is. It's like the cello is such a warm, deep, resonant sound, right? And I realized, like, that's what his voice sounds like. It reminds me of if you were to compare his voice to an instrument, it's like a cello, and especially because he sings with like a middle throat voice with touching down into the chest a little bit, but it's this warm, resonant sound. Now this was live in Las Vegas in 1970. So it was his second August in Las Vegas, and he because he did it live, he didn't have the cello, and he sped it up and he made the rhythm more prominent. Like I said before, there's some rhythm to it in the studio version, but here he really makes the rhythm. It's more rhythmic, and he does it a little bit faster. This version's a little bit shorter than the studio version because he does it a little bit faster. But let's give it a whirl. You can see my reaction. This is one of my favorite suits. It's the red ladder suit. It's got a sash belt. Looks really good. You'll see.
As a snow flies On a cold and gray Chicago morning, a poor little baby child is born in the ghetto. And his mama cries. But if there's one thing that she don't need, it's another hungry mouth to feed in the ghetto. People, don't you understand?
Like this rhythm is over the top compared to those.
You're gonna be an angry young man someday.
Wait, it's much faster.
Now take a look at you and me. Are we too blind to see? Or do we simply turn our heads and look the other way? Well, the world turns. And a hungry little boy with a runny nose plays in the street as a cold wind blows in the ghetto. And his hunger burns. So he starts to roam the streets at night, and he learns how to steal and he learns how to fight in the ghetto. Then one night in desperation, the young man breaks away.
You can hear the females.
He buys a gun, he steals
the
a
gospel
car, he
feel
tries
is
to
much heavier
run,
in
but
this
he don't get far, and his mama cries.
Because it's faster.
As the crowd gathers round, an angry young man face down in the street with a gun in his hand in the ghetto. And as the young man dies, on a cold and gray Chicago morning, another little baby child is born in the ghetto.
Different ending where he ends it. Woo. That's it, man. I mentioned that Mac Davis wrote this. Mac Davis told some interesting stories in interviews because he wrote several hit songs for Elvis. He wrote A Little Less Conversation. That's the one that was in the film Live a Little, Love a Little, and it's an excellent song, and it's almost funky, and that's the one that I forget when and I forget how it became a big hit, but it was reintroduced and they modified it a bit, like in the 2000s or 2010. I forget exactly when. I just don't remember, but it became like a big hit again. So Mac wrote A Little Less Conversation. He wrote In the Ghetto, and I know he wrote something else. Oh God, Charo, I know, but I thought he wrote another hit for Elvis. I forget what it was, but so anyhow, so Mac Davis told two interesting stories. One was that he talks about how he was struggling as a songwriter, and when whatever the first big hit was, maybe, did he record Kentucky Rain? I can't remember, but whatever the big first hit Elvis did of his, right? When he talks about how when he got the royalty checks, it was like huge, and he bought a Corvette. I think he bought a house and all this stuff. But he talked about going to the bank to cash the check, and the teller was like, "What?" So that was it. So it changed his life, right? It changed his life in a big way to write for Elvis, and then he tells of a time he was in Memphis for some reason, and he was invited to the Memphian Theater. So everyone knows, like, Elvis used to go to the Memphian Theater like at midnight, and he'd rent it out all night, and he'd invite all these people, So all these people would come and they'd watch the movie, but he was treated like royalty, So he had his own like custom made gold plate tray that hung over the that's what Max said. It hung over the front seat, so he had his own gold tray, and he would sit in an aisle with his girlfriend Linda, and supposedly no one else was supposed to sit with him, right? The bodyguards made sure like no one came to sit with him, and then so Mac was invited, right? and he walked in, and he didn't know the rules. So he just walked over and walked down Elvis's aisle and sat down with him. He's chatting with him. And he said Elvis acted like it was normal. There's no problem. Then he went to the bathroom. Mac went to the bathroom, and one of the bodyguards or staff guys, he didn't say who it was, but they went into the bathroom behind him and said, "You're not supposed to sit with Elvis." And Mac he was really offended, and he came out and he kind of told Elvis off. And Elvis apologized. He said, "Who told you that? Who told you that?" Mac wouldn't tell him, but he said, Elvis said, and Mac said something like, "I've written like 3 or 4 hit songs for you. You'd think I get treated with a little bit of respect. And Elvis said, "Well, what can I do to make up for it?" He goes, "Give me your personal number." and and Elvis didn't know his phone number. he was so used to like people doing every bloody thing for him. He didn't know his phone number. So he asked like Joe or someone, "Joe, what's my phone number?" Oh, God. So that was in the Ghetto, and I do much prefer the studio version to that live version. I think you lose a lot playing that song very quickly and not having the cello. And the rhythm is that the intense rhythm is just it overpowers the lyrics of the song. You don't really listen to the lyrics. But I guess he felt he had to do that for Vegas, like to get a big sound, right? And he had the whole band, right? So thanks for listening.